Hey everyone, it's 10 Types, and today we're talking about something that is very, very important to the Pokemon TCG and the main way that many people actually experience the game, which is, of course, Pokemon TCG Live. If for whatever reason you're not familiar with Pokemon TCG Live, this is the main way that people play the game online, and it's an online client that you could use to play against people. Specifically, it mainly supports Standard. We'll talk about the things it has and doesn't have, and also I mentioned the word obviously online because you play online. This is not the same client as Pokemon TCG Online. And that was a previous client. Pokemon TCG Live replaced it. That client at some point, and tell me in the comment section if you want me to make this video or if you're not really interested in it, but making a video comparing the two because they definitely had pros and cons. Like legitimately, they did have pros and cons compared to each other. I think a lot of people like to bash Pokemon TCG Live, which admittedly I'm kind of going to be doing today because it's having some problems and they might be getting worse here. But this is actually the website for Pokemon TCG Live. I don't remember how I ended up here, but I did. And so obviously you get to play the Pokemon TCG. You can collect cards, but it's not really focused on collecting, unlike Pokemon TCG Pocket, which is pretty focused on collecting. Certainly has a substantial gameplay aspect to it as well, but Pokemon TCG Live is really about playing the game. And then in the game, it's pretty easy to get cards. I will say, as a brand new player, it can be a little difficult to get cards, but once you've been playing for a little while, it's pretty easy to get really whatever you want without spending any money at all. You can't actually directly spend any money into the game. However, if we scroll down, you can see that you can scan code cards from booster packs or whatever, and this will allow you to go ahead and get some cards, which is like cool, right? But ultimately the main thing you're going to be looking at here is going to be growing a collection. You can actually do it through stuff like the battle pass, which they always seem to highlight. Like, I guess it's cool, I suppose, too. Tell me actually in the comment section, does the battle pass, like, does that dictate a lot of the decks you play and your experiences with the game? To me, it doesn't at all, but as newer players, I imagine there are probably some of you that it does. But anyways, also I want to talk about this section here, which is the game mode section. This is definitely one of the most important things here. This is Pokemon TCG Live makes it easy to learn new skills and strategies, which actually we'll be talking about as well. But then you can add more cards. Okay, I don't know what this has to do about with game modes, that first part, but use the same rules as the physical Pokemon TCG. And I guess I will mention here that the game generally doesn't have too many rules mistakes. Unsurprisingly, from time to time, there's something that slips through the cracks, but just like a mistake. I'd say the average player makes a lot more rules mistakes than Pokemon TCG Live. Not that it's literally perfect or anything, but it's pretty accurate there, to the level that it should be there. It was not always that the case. It used to be kind of bad with that, but anyways, it has the same rules as the physical Pokemon TCG, and you battle against each other in standard format. So it is predominantly standard in terms of the ranked mode. That is only in standard, and there are 3 casual formats. One which is standard, and then also says that you can support the expanded format. Support for the expanded format is in development. So ultimately, there is kind of expanded, right? But only kind of. It's not fully there. There is parts of it, which obviously means that it's not. You can't play expanded there. Also, you cannot play Friends games expanded, which I would say, and I stand by this fact, is definitely something that should be in the game. I mean, there are lots of things that kind of should be in the game that aren't. You can say this about any game as well. I am kind of gonna say some stuff about Pokemon TCG Live, but there are lots of issues with all sorts of different games. But ultimately, expanded friend matches, as well as trainer trials friend matches, but especially standard friend matches should be in the game, and it's really disappointing that they're not, because it reduces the amount of things that people can do. But anyways, that is part of it here. I do want to talk about the trainer trials a little bit and the state of the game. First of all, though, I do want to talk about the one particular issue that I've been seeing, and I actually asked my community about it as well. And this is just the game. What I asked my community. Also, I'm not signed into my main YouTube account. This is one, why I can vote, and 2, why it's not my account. But anyways, I asked, has live been extra buggy for you lately? And a lot of people said yes. Obviously, unsurprisingly for me, it's true. That's why I asked it. This is 85% of people, which means 85% of the people say the game's getting worse. And then also a lot of the comments, or I didn't get that many comments, but I got a few comments, and most of them were saying the game's always been buggy. So yes, which of course, if the game's always been buggy, then the answer would be no. It hasn't been extra buggy. It's just been normal buggy. So assuming that most of the people have like can properly, I guess, what comprehend the question, then this is really bad, right? Like the game's getting a lot worse. It has been bad at points in the past though, but for me, how it's been getting worse is it's been crashing, or I don't know if crashing, but disconnecting, and just like skipping turns or something like that, right? Just disconnecting essentially. And also, it's been happening to my opponents some as well. I've been having issues where my opponents are just like not doing anything. Sometimes it happens. You, I guess, like load up the game and just forget to play or something. I don't know. But theoretically, it could happen, but it's been happening a lot more than I feel like it should. And I've been hearing about this from other people as well. So I did want to acknowledge that. And that is ultimately, I guess, my reason for making this video. But if it could just be some weird coincidence. And actually, one of the comments was that the person had one of the people in my YouTube community said that they have been noticing more bugs, but they've also been playing more, and I've also been playing more. So theoretically, it could just be like a weird bias thing there. But ultimately, going back to the formats thing, ultimately, I think the formats thing is one of the most important things to the Pokemon TCG. I guess I will say, in terms of new content since the creation of Pokemon TCG Live, there's been trainer trials and there's been a few different things. But I quickly look at the letters to the community released lately or recently on like about recently-ish, it's some month ago. And so it's about perfect order, and then it like talks about standard and stuff. And we actually will, this is very relevant to the trainer trials, but it says that, oh yeah, there's more support for the competitive players. I will say being able to support the competitive scene through the use of Pokemon TCG Live is a good thing. That being said, most people aren't competitive players, so I think it is very important to have the game be enjoyable to casual players. I'd say it's more important to be enjoyable to casual players than competitive players, but at the very least, it should still be a very high priority for them. But then there is, just a bunch of different things here that aren't super, I don't know if not super meaningful, but they're, things you'd expect. Trainer trials and trainer trials is also trainer trials, I believe, and then also battle pass stuff. But then there's also the new learning lab lessons things. I actually haven't looked at this. It's apparently for Mega Zygarde. By the way, Mega Zygarde, if you don't know, it's pretty bad. Like it's not a good card. It's funny, but it's quite bad. But anyways, they had some new Professor Fur's Learning Lab things, which is a way to teach new players the game, which I actually do think it does a pretty good job. I actually played through the post rotation one. It actually didn't work exactly, but anyways, I did that on my channel. Not no one, but very few people watched it. But anyways, that's funny to watch if you want to see me mess around with that. But then look at the trainer trials. I think this is definitely the thing that can be the most exciting, right? You look at standard, and it's reflect, and the bulk of the game, it's reflecting the physical Pokemon TCG, and that's cool, right? I love the Pokemon TCG, and while Pokemon TCG Live doesn't work perfectly in every way, it works in some ways, and it's even if it's like half as fun as the physical TCG, for just like as throwing out a number there, it still is based on this like really really fun game. And again, it is also very easy to acquire cards compared to the physical TCG. In the physical TCG, you could just like proxy cards for playing with your friends and stuff like that. But it definitely, I mean, you need someone to play against, and you ideally want a bunch of people to play against so you can have different experiences and be able to do different things. When you're playing physically, though, or on something like a simulator like PTG Sim, with things like that, and then you do have more options than you do in Pokemon TCG Live, though, because as I said, the formats, you're going to have the standard format, the expanded format, which is again partial expanded. It is missing some cards. I actually recently made a video on the state of the expanded format, and is pretty control heavy. So might not be, or I actually don't remember how recently I made it, but whenever I make videos on the format, it is it's pretty kind of controlly, and live expand is actually going to be less controlly. I don't know if it's more balanced, though I think it is. But anyways, expand is in a bit of a messy spot. So for the fact that it's not being very well supported in live, it's also not being very well supported in person either. But anyways, with the train trials, that is the third format, and this is actually the thing that's probably the most interesting about Pokemon TCG Live because it is very unique and something you don't see separately. Except, so we can actually look at all the train trials for 2026 we've seen revealed so far. The current one, what day is it? The current one is the Champions Training Ground, and the previous one was Early Rotation. Early Rotation is essentially standard, and the Champions Training Ground is essentially also standard. They are like a little different. Well, okay, this is the exact same as previous standard. So this is the idea here was that it would allow people to prep for in-person tournaments or something like that. I will say if you want to prep for tournaments, using a simulator is going to be probably better in terms of you can test a lot of different things and it can be really powerful. And so relying on Pokemon TCG Live. I mean, I think a lot of people like to bash players of Pokemon TCG Live for misplays and for just kind of seeing some weird stuff and just not, not having a consistent play experience. I think it can be really fun. I really enjoy playing on Pokemon TCG Live and seeing lots of different decks from time to time, but also some meta stuff. But if you are training for like a high level tournament, then that's probably not what you're looking for. In some ways, you might see some of that stuff, some weird stuff, but it will be a little different, and a simulator might actually be better for that. So again, I think I've heard people complain about the fact that because the thing is that Pokemon TCG Live rotates, or rather, the new set comes out as soon as it's released, as opposed to as soon as it's tournament legal, meaning that there's a time before the set's tournament legal where you can't, essentially play the tournament format there because it's onto the new format. This also applies with the rotation, which happens at the same time as the new set release for perfect order here. But ultimately, I think people complain about it a lot more than it, actually matters. I think the amount it matters is pretty little, but they did something about it, which is cool, I guess. But this is by taking over the Trainer Trials format, which is Trainer Trials format is supposed to be kind of, I'd say, fun and wacky, less serious than standard, with some maybe, I don't know if wacky is quite the right word, but also just like kind of experimental, right? This is where they're going to try different things. Also, I did want to comment on the fact that Expanded is going to be, well, one, it's kind of experimental because they are not where they quite want to be, and two, I was going to talk about when they're going to update it, but I couldn't even find the article where they said that. I'm sure I could if I digged enough, but they really do not like to talk about Expanded. But with the trainer trial here, the fact that it's been standard for starting on like for essentially all of March and like half of April, it just standard is kind of boring. Essentially removing a trainer trial. It does have some reasoning to exist. The early rotation one allows people to test stuff kind of earlier. The post rotation one, or the pre-rotation one, the later one allows people to test for different stuff. So it does something, I guess, but I wouldn't say it's super fun. I guess tell me in the comment section if you've played either of those trainer trials, especially the current trainer trial, the one that is, or the current one at the time of recording and releasing this, where we see that the format is, it's going to be a standard there, the format that people just were playing, right? But then we see the next format, which is GLC. GLC is kind of cool. Wait, no, sorry. The next format is GLC. The one before that is Fighting Type Frenzy. Fighting Type Frenzy is just standard, with just fighting types, which is, so this one's a more limited version of standard. GLC, along with like one or two of the other formats, are the only ones that add more cards to the format, which I think is cool. For example, I really like to play the card Scoop Up Net, so you can play that in GLC, and that's fun. If you want to play a card like Crobat V or Deny GX, you can't play. You can play that in or in live expanded. If you want to play a card like Versus Seeker, you can't play that. Those cards are in the game. You can own those cards, and I think you can like trade in credits or whatever for those cards as well. Not that you should, because you can't play them, but you can acquire them or have them at least. But anyways, with the fighting type format, just fighting type standard, I think that format, I mean, fighting type is good, right? You look at Mega Lucario. Mega Lucario has such early fighting type cards, and it's pretty good. We got Meowth, but you can cut that, and you probably wouldn't want to be playing that anyways in the format where everyone's playing fighting. And the other deck is going to be Okidogi. these are really, I guess Cynthia's Garchomp EX is also fighting, but the other cards aren't fighting. So with Okidogi, though, you got Barbarical, you got Lunatone and Solrock. Lunatone and Solrock, I think, is going to be in like every deck in the format, which is okay, I guess. It's kind of fun, but ultimately, the format is like fine, I guess, but it's kind of boring. I can't imagine you're really going to see any deck that's. Oh, I guess there's also Mega Zygarde if you want to play that, but that's kind of bad. There's no Shaman, I suppose, but let's be honest. You can still do. It's so much energy. I guess you're not getting Vidooed either, so that's the cool thing. I guess I don't know. Ultimately, though, the format isn't super interesting. I wouldn't say. I guess tell me in the comment section if you're hyped for this for whatever reason and why. I'd love for you to love this format, right? I'd love to love this format as well, but I just don't think I will. But anyways, we got that for 2 weeks, and we got GLC for looks like 3 weeks. GLC is like, kind of fun. I make some videos about it. I'd say generally though, and I've said this before, it's got a small but dedicated community, and that community also has relatively little overlap with Pokemon TCG Live compared to, um, just like a random sample of the same size there. But there's some overlap. It's certainly a cool format. I think the best of the trainer trials formats. There have been some other fun ones. The most fun of the trainer trials formats, I'd definitely say, is the one that didn't work with the A specs. But anyways, clearly live is. Oh, and then there's the previous ones as well, which is Twin Battle, which is bad, and then Bloomy Buddies Battle, which is terrible. So they've not been on a good run here. I don't know. I assume Blooming Buddy Battles was bad. It's only grass, commons, and uncommons. There was one that was only commons and uncommons, and everyone played, or most people played Festival Lead because it was like a lot stronger than all the other stuff. And then the other decks you can't play that you'd play in that format. And Festival Lead's just like super broken there. So, anyways, they've not been on a very good run with this, and I feel like it's pretty disappointing. So, along with the train trials being kind of underwhelming, though, again, GLC is I think kind of cool. Though it's not something new either. It's not like a new format, and also on top of that, I'd say GLC without the old expanded cards is like definitely worse than full GLC. I'd say expanded without the old expanded cards is. I don't know. I don't know if it's better or worse. It's a little different. I'd say actually plays probably closer to standard, which in some ways might be worse. But I'd say in terms of what people would describe as a good format, that live expanded is going to be a little bit better. But anyways, that's not a good thing, right? That's me saying that GLC is not in a better spot without those older cards. You're losing some cool engine pieces and some cool trainers and stuff like that. But anyways, I'd say overall live is in a somewhat disappointing state. A lot of the things I've said haven't been huge because there haven't been a ton of huge developments, but the fact that the game's not working well for a lot of people and also isn't really going anywhere is a little disappointing because it's not quite where it needs to be. And the big thing, I guess, quote unquote, looming soon, who knows how soon that is full expanded, but I mean, I don't even think that if full expanded gets added to the game, there's going to be a ton of hype. I mean, there will be some hype and some talk, but I think that's also something that's going to get more talk than actual play. And on top of that, I do think that with full expanded, if they add friend matches, or even partial expanded, if they add friend matches, that is huge in terms of being able to do some cool stuff. I don't know how much stuff people will do with it, but I know I'll definitely make some cool content with it. But give me any ideas if you have those in the comment section. But I hope you enjoyed, and also huge shout out to my YouTube members for supporting the channel. It really helps out. But I cannot speak. What's happening? But anyone can support my channel by liking and subscribing. It really helps support me, and I really, really appreciate it. But I hope you all enjoyed, and as Osmond said, see you in the next video.